Happy Father's Day to all those who are dads and watching today. My own dad came over last night, the first time he's been over in 6 months, and we had a beer together and some food, which was lovely. I think that and the gospel reminded me of something that happened when we were little children. I was just 4 and we were in the house with our mum, and it was an evening and there was a terrible gale, a storm outside, and Dad was outside in the sheds or something, and we could hear the wind howling, but we were huddled up and we were fine. And then the door opened, the noise increased, and Dad came in, and he looked a bit dishevelled, but he had something in his hand like this, and a smile on his face, and he came over and showed us, and it was just a tiny little bird. I can't say it was a sparrow, I can't remember. And it was just flown into the sheds, maybe caused by fear of the storm. And then when it was in the shed, you know, like when a bird is inside, it was flapping all over the place, trying to get out, hitting the windows, until it was completely exhausted. And then it let Dad pick it up and carry it in. We kept it in a box till the storm had died down, and then it flew off. I think sometimes it's only maybe when we're wrecked, when we're exhausted by the storm, that we allow the Father's love to embrace us, or for us to be aware of it. And it seems to me that Jeremiah was in a little bit of a position like that. He's in the midst of a terrible storm. And he says the words in that first reading, "But the Lord is at my side, a mighty hero." This is what God does for us. What caused Jeremiah's storm? Jeremiah's was caused by faithfulness to God. Almost enough to put you off it, isn't it? But that's what caused it. He lived in a world where people had turned their backs on God, and he didn't. And he spoke up what God wanted him to speak, even though he was no more than a lad. He criticized them for not keeping the Sabbath, for idolatry, making other things more important than God, for an abuse of the foreigner and the poor. Does that sound familiar? Well, Jeremiah was prepared to call it out, but he suffered terribly as a result. You can imagine it being done today, couldn't you? The amount of abuse that we'd get on social media. But he got that abuse face to face. He was tricked, terrorized, abandoned, ridiculed. But then he says to God, "I have committed my cause to you." That's why he does it. "I've committed my cause to you." It's interesting because when I read that phrase, I think it's something that could maybe even be more easily said by God to us. Astonishing as it is, our all-powerful God, our Creator, has committed his cause to us, his creatures. And Jeremiah didn't even see the half of it. He didn't see the incarnation, the life of Jesus, his death on the cross. He has committed his cause to us. So what's our response? Well, in a way, the gospel tells us what our response needs to be. Because Jesus says to us, "Declare yourself for me in the presence of others." Now that's quite a thing. Maybe especially for us Catholics. We're not that keen, are we, on declaring ourselves for Jesus in front of others? I sometimes think we treat our Christian faith a little bit like a virus. We sort of keep socially, spiritually distanced. We put a mask on, almost as though We're afraid that someone's going to catch it. But we're not afraid that someone's going to catch it, are we? We delight in the fact that people come into the faith. We rejoice in people coming to know God and being baptized. So what does stop us? Maybe it is, I think probably, what Jeremiah experienced. It is a fear of being ridiculed, of us saying maybe, look, I'm a believer in Jesus, I follow him, and then people looking at us thinking, what's he all about? It takes some courage to openly declare ourselves for Jesus. But that's what he asks of us. In fact, in that gospel, he says to us 3 times, do not be afraid. Stop being afraid. He says to us, people can only hurt us temporarily. Now, physically, whereas God has our physical and spiritual lives, our souls, in his hands for eternity. So why do we listen to them? And why do we not listen to God? Today's gospel, he says that if we don't listen to God, how can we expect God to declare himself for us? And you know, we do lots of things when we're afraid. And I think the reasons we do those things are, well, maybe 3 reasons. I think one is love. You know, if a house is on fire, there's no way we're going in that house. But somebody tells us our child is in there, then let them try and stop us. And so what about our love for God? Are we going to do what he asks of us, even though we're afraid, but simply because we love him? And another time sometimes we overcome fear is because the consequences of not overcoming one fear is maybe greater danger. Or a daft thing during the week, a comedy of a man on a plane afraid to jump out with a parachute on. He was going to back out until the pilot says, we're going to crash. He was out like a shot. The consequences of us, even though we're afraid of not doing God's will, of not declaring ourselves for others, he says, well, why should God declare himself for us at the final judgment if we don't declare ourselves for him? And maybe the third thing is that fear, we overcome fear by the desire to be successful. Think of those guys on the ski jumps. How do they go down it? But it's a desire to succeed, or going for an interview or anything. We overcome fears with a desire to succeed. What sort of disciples do we want to be like? None of us want to be mediocre in our discipleship. If we want to be the disciples that Jesus calls us to be, then we have to overcome those fears and declare ourselves for Jesus in front of others. There is one more thing, of course, and maybe it's the most important thing of all. And that is to remember what Jeremiah said when he faced those fears and declared himself for God. He did it because the Lord is at my side, a mighty hero.